Do you have more questions than answers? We don't have all the solutions, but we do have a community of people just like you. We are the curious, the seekers, the concerned, those into data, and those that are dreamers. And the closer we get, the better we learn. About ourselves, each other, and about our planet. Now is the time to get closer. Join us. Get your free ticket to the Learning Planet Festival. festival.learning-planet.org.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you are tuning in. My name is Pauline. I am Community Engagement Manager at Learning Planet, and it's my real pleasure to welcome you to this session on the role of changemakers ecosystems in generating and accelerating positive impact at scale. We have an amazing set of community building powerhouses with us around the table today. And it's going to be also my pleasure to be co-moderating this session with Gabrielle, who is going to introduce herself in just a minute. Before that, I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes telling you more about the context of this whole conversation. This week, from last Saturday until this Saturday, we are celebrating education through the Learning Planet Festival, the flagship annual event under the Learning Planet community, which this year has been gathering more than 250 partners and 400 sessions, unfortunately, mostly online because, as you know, of the pandemic situation around the world. But it has, led to beautiful encounters, beautiful moments of experience and learning together, collective intelligence moments as well, sharing knowledge and best practices together. This session, as a matter of fact, will also be available as a replay on the Learning Planet YouTube channel at the end of the session if you wish to replay it. Thank you so much for joining us. So just one word about the topic of the day today before I leave the floor to Gabrielle. Learning Planet is a network, is an alliance of organizations, especially working in the field of education and sustainable development. I think we are in this era where we see more and more organizations moving away from the traditional organizational setting of a business or an NGO into another relatively new model, which is the model of a network, the model of consolidating already existing efforts and trying to pool resources together in order to become more efficient at scale. And this is exactly the topic that we're going to discuss today with all of the heads of the networks that are around this table today with us. Gabrielle, over to you if you want to introduce yourself first, introduce a bit of yourself and how you relate to another network actually called Kids for SDGs, and then introduce our speakers of the day. Gabrielle, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be co-moderating this roundtable today. My name is Gabrielle Wong, a 16-year-old at Wickham Abbey, and I'm currently in the process of founding my own initiative, Tech for Changes. So it is a youth-led nonprofit organization with the mission to equip girls and non-binary students in Cambodia with the skills to code and innovate for a more sustainable future. I'm also a member of Kids for SDGs, an amazing network of young social entrepreneurs who collaborate together to accelerate positive change around the Sustainable Development Goals. So today in this roundtable, to talk about this topic, we have 5 wonderful speakers. Jaru Bilimoria, the co-founder of Catalyst 2030, Julie Murat, the co-founder and COO of Bridge for Billions, Laure Frech-Bruat, the co-founder of Snowball Effect, Matthias Schaffelmeier, the co-founder of Changemaker X Change, and Stéphane Héloïse Kra, the executive director of Digital Africa. Welcome, everyone. I have read so many inspiring things about your organizations and your impact so far. Is it possible to tell us more about your work and let us in on one very special and differentiating feature about each of your organizations or network in terms of impact? It is our request for everyone to keep answers to the point, and I'll be taking this discussion quickly around the round table, starting with Jeroen.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you're in and calling in from. Thank you, Gabrielle, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you. Young people like you inspire me. So it's nice to have you on the panel co-facilitating, really. So that's really nice. I've started multiple social enterprises since actually I was younger than you at 12, being the first one. So it's really nice that to hear that happening. I'm currently over here representing Catalyst 2030. Some of the people on this planet, including Learning Planet, are members of Catalyst 2030. It is an movement of social entrepreneurs and innovators from across the world. And we are currently having 1,200 members who are part of this. And we are focusing on 5 main areas to help accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. So I think this is what is most important. Our 5 main, first is trying to shift the funding paradigm so that funding is more equally accessible to everybody across the sector, because we know that to achieve the SDGs, $1 trillion is needed. And we need all sorts of capital to make that happen. And also capital which is done differently, like philanthropic capital, which is just now not rightly done, or bilateral aid, or however. So the first is shifting the funding paradigm. Secondly is us as a sector of entrepreneurs, innovators, becoming stronger and having a seat at the table so we can shape policies and make policies happen. The third is evolving a strong narrative for the whole sector and making sure that we are able to do that from the last village in India, creating a system right through to the global level, where entrepreneurs and young innovators have a voice in changing the whole way the ecosystem happens. So these are our 3 main ones. The other is doing this all through collaborations. So we will have as many collaborations, and in Catalyst, we've already in the past 2 years had more than 40 collaborations take off and spin off. So that's something which is really, really good. And the last is anyone who wants to be a member. So this is an open invitation to all to join and to co-create to achieve the SDGs can become a member. And we like 80% of our members to be actively involved and volunteer to shape the movement. So this is it in a nutshell about Catalyst. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Jeroen. So hearing the collaboration of 40 collaborations and a huge network of 1,200 members, just hearing this network of social entrepreneurs working together to accelerate the SDGs is truly inspiring. So being a part of Catalyst 2030, I especially loved that it's open invitation, that anyone can become a member, and the amount of inclusivity that everyone, no matter what age, race, or gender, can all help achieve a better future. I find that really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would also now like to welcome Julie.
Hello, Gabrielle. Hi, everyone. Great to be here with you all. So my name is Julie Murat. I'm French originally, calling you from Spain today. This is where I moved 6 years ago already to start Bridge for Billions. And we're a social enterprise with the goal to democratize access to quality support for entrepreneurs and create more inclusive ecosystems, entrepreneurship ecosystems. And we think that's very, very important because I invite you later to just try to type entrepreneur on Google image and you'll just see what comes up, mostly the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos and just white males with a tech solution. So it's extremely important to have a more inclusive ecosystem so that we shift the narrative around who can be an entrepreneur, who is an entrepreneur. And that's also important because we usually create solutions for people similar to us or for problems we understand. So if we only support the same type of people, we only have the same type of solution. And if we support a single mother, then maybe we'll have the kindergarten of the future. And if we support refugees, we'll have solutions for them, et cetera, et cetera. So who gets access to be an entrepreneur directly has an impact on what solutions we create. And that's really why we do what we do. And today we have in those 6 years 3,600 entrepreneurs that we've supported, a network of more than 2,000 mentors from 90 countries. And we're making a difference by giving them access to programs that are digital, but also very human because they have the support of the whole community and the mentor. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing more. We are a network of entrepreneurs ourselves, but I've also personally benefited from a lot of networks and communities in my journey as entrepreneur, including Changemaker Exchange that Matthias is representing here today. So I'm excited to speak about how we complement each other today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'd like to just quickly just express the admiration for having so many entrepreneurs on your program with over so many mentors. For being a youth aspiring social entrepreneur, I cannot stress the importance of having mentorship and guidance throughout the journey. I know a lot of people, a lot of students, a lot of classmates who really want to make a difference and really want to make a change, but they just cannot seem to find the first step and they cannot seem to find the solution. And I really love how you touched on the stereotype of entrepreneurs. When you Google, you only see Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. And I think that having that stereotype can really discourage people, youth and different people from really attaining their dreams and their goals of making a better difference. And I just think that the solutions that you create and the mentorship and guidance that you offer will truly be very, very important for billions of people, whether the age or gender. And I really do appreciate the inclusivity again. Thank you. So I'd like to move on to Laure to introduce her work now.
Hello. Hello, Gabrielle. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here. So I'm Laura. I am also French. Maybe you see it from my accent. I'm living in Austria, in Vienna. And so I've been co-creating Snowball Effect with Yunju, who is my co-founder. And basically, we call ourselves the Replication Tinder because we train and then matchmake aspiring social entrepreneurs with the initial founders of proven social businesses so that they would replicate their solution in their own country. So by adapting it and making it suit the local problems, but not starting from scratch. And so it initially started because previously in my other experience, I was working in an incubator for social businesses that was awesome, but I could see that after 2 years, less than 1 out of 10 was actually becoming a proven social business with a proven impact, proven business model. And so when I saw that, I thought, okay, why don't we actually replicate what is working somewhere else? And I met exactly at that time Yunju, who's now my co-founder, and she had exactly the same idea at the same time as me, but coming from a different perspective. So she was working in consultancies that is helping proven social businesses to scale across borders. And she could see that even though those people had very clear strategy to where to go, how to go there, it was very hard for them to find the right people to replicate their project, because you need to trust that person, because it's super difficult to let your baby go, and because it's difficult to also know where your project would make sense somewhere else. And so we thought, okay, maybe there is a gap to be bridged. There are two people, like the initial founders of proven social businesses and aspiring social entrepreneurs, that needs to find each other so that we would replicate those projects. And so, yeah, what we do is this, to select those amazing projects and then train and matchmake future people by, again, helping them adapt the solution locally.
Amazing, thank you. So I would just like to touch on how ideal your organization's snowball effect and the method of replication will be so important for youth out there currently stuck with finding the right idea or brainstorming, because I love what you said about having successful ideas and bringing them and spreading them across the world, and also matching social entrepreneurs in order to make this strong team to bring the idea across. And I think many people would love to be a part of this program and get the connections and the right match to build a better future. Thank you very much. And I would now like to move on to Stefan Eloise.
Thanks, Gabrielle, and thank you all for being here. I mean, I'm really amazed by the panel, and my co-panelist. Already all I heard is super inspiring. So thank you for inviting me to join today. So I'm Stéphane Héloïse, and I'm also French, as Laure just mentioned. There's a big representation of French people today. I am both an entrepreneur and a researcher, and I have been dedicated to that question of change making, but from a tech perspective maybe, and how technology can bring and support scale, as Pauline was saying, to be more efficient, change to be more efficient at scale. I mean, so it's really hard today, I think, to imagine change making without thinking of technology for the best and for the worst, because we've seen so many horrible aspects. Especially recently, whether when you think of global warming, of social inclusion, when you think of inequalities and so on. But it's also an amazing opportunity provider and catalyst. So I want to focus a little bit on that. In my past experiences, I focused on that from an ethical perspective. So as a researcher, I studied the ethics of AI from both a social standpoint, but also from the global South standpoint. So and before joining Digital Africa, which I represent today, I created two businesses aiming at supporting African digital innovators in their connection with the global economy. And I also led developments in Africa for an online education platform called Open Classroom that probably some of you know. They trained 3.5 million students every month into digital skills all over the world. So I believe, that digital innovation coming from Africa, more specifically, is not only important in terms of impact for the continent, like how technology can bring social change, but also change in general to the developmental challenges of the continent, but also for the rest of the world. And that really is a kind of standpoint that we try to, and that's a mission that we try to develop at Digital Africa. Because when you think of it as a fact, 50%, almost 50% of the population in the age of working by 2050 will be based in Africa. And we also know that, like considering all the challenges, all the challenges that the continent is facing, resonates with global challenges. So bringing a technology that is more inclusive, that is more tied to positive impact, and that will bring, that will sustain a real economy. As we say at Digital Africa, our mission is to equip African tech entrepreneurs with capabilities to design and scale digital innovation for the real economy. And that vision is very much about, made in Africa technology is key driver for sustainable growth all, globally, all across the world. So that how we do that at Digital Africa, we are kind of a super aggregator of both programs, data, and funding. Basically, we focus our activities on those three change, I would call it change-making levers. One is skills, obviously, and capacity building, and being able to design and scale effective digital innovations. The second is funding and money, because it is always, I would say in French, le nerf de la guerre. So sorry for those who don't speak French, but basically it's essential to be able to fund early stage project in their early development. And the third is advocating for the best condition to support made in Africa technology. So we do need to, scale digital innovation, we need a whole ecosystem of both entrepreneurs, investors, policymakers, and public authorities, researchers, and science. And I know that at Learning Planet, it's also something very, it's important value, and all the support systems and support networks of all the above and pre-cited actors. So Digital Africa is very much committed to a digital transformation, bolstering the real economy, as I said, and jobs creation through employment, entrepreneurship, and productive activities, ensuring both upskilling and greater autonomy. This is very much how we see, how technology can be in favor of a positive change making. And we want to, I really insist on that also because maybe as a researcher, I do believe that science and education will always, be the foundational ground for change making at any scale, whether at your personal scale, but also at a more global scale. So I'm happy to discuss that further with the rest of the panelists today.
Thank you very much, Stéphane Louise. So I love the new perspective in a way about change making and how tech is absolutely necessary. And I agree with this completely, how in order for businesses and nonprofits, in order to actually make an impact and it can scale up in the world, you really need to catch up with the increasingly digitalized world. And I love the actions that you do, the 3 steps, the data and the way that you use the data and then the funding and to find out the different skills in order to make sure that you get the help needed and you make sure that the help is accessible to social entrepreneurs around the world, and you give them a foundation and a platform to fight for what they're passionate about. Thank you very much. And finally, last but certainly not least, I would like to invite Matthias.
Thank you, Gabrielle, and it's wonderful to be here. So our core belief at Changemaker Exchange is that meaningful and successful collaborations require not just a really deep understanding of the problem and the system that you're trying to improve, but a deep personal connection between the people who decide to collaborate towards the intended positive change. And so at the heart of Changemaker Exchange is a community of about 1,000 young changemakers from 130 countries around the world. Our flagship program is 4 to 5 day retreats, mostly in nature, where we bring groups of 20 to 25 people together to really build deeper personal connection, learn from each other, exchange experiences, also talk about the hardship and the pain that comes with change making and being an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur, nurture their well-being, address that issue of, what does it do to me as a person going about this change? And last but not least, ideally create collaborations and co-create positive actions versus focusing just on the individual ventures that everyone brings to these retreats. Over the years, we've added 2 additional pillars to our work. Number 1 is a pool of facilitators from around the world who have been trained in formats and methodologies to take groups through such a process of building deep connection and collaboration. And we really believe that facilitation is almost a bit like the software required for positive change and collective action. And we want to bring that to the world, a new way of addressing facilitation. And on the other hand, a 3rd pillar of our work is the Possibilists Alliance, which in itself is a collaborative project of 16 of the world's largest networks of changemakers, including the Obama Foundation, Ashoka, Unleash, Unison Youth, One Young World, We Are Family Foundation, and many more, who together run scientific studies to analyze the challenges and needs of young changemakers, with honestly quite shocking results that have been shown in our first report last year of over 60% of young people being changemakers having symptoms of burnout, only 20% of them being able to live off their ventures and making a living. And then number 2, in addition to these scientific studies, co-create action to improve the ecosystem and the conditions for social entrepreneurs and social innovators. So a community, a pool of facilitators, and a global alliance of youth startup changemaker focused networks is, I think, in a nutshell, what we're made of today, going into our 10th year. And it's yeah, a pleasure and an honor to be in this delightful round and group. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say quick thanks for mentioning the hardships that, and actually acknowledging that there is so many difficulties to actually execute your project. And I think a lot of, I'd say, stereotype and stigma around aspiring youth social entrepreneurs is that people who have successfully done these things have not faced the same problems that people with no foundations are facing. The same kind of where can I find a team? How can I collaborate? How can I trust my team to collaborate and actually bring out this impact? And I love this program, how you bring together everyone in a 4 to 5 days retreat and you bring groups closer. Because being in a boarding school, I can really highlight that 4 to 5 days together, cramped together in a house, can definitely strengthen the bond, and it can definitely provide an even stronger foundation for teamwork. Thank you so much. And now I would like to pass over to Pauline for the next session.
Thanks so much, Gabrielle, for this first table round. I'll launch the second, which I'm very curious about, actually. So we heard the 5 of you, you know, talking about your respective organizations and networks in such an inspiring way. I'm super inspired, and I hope all of our participants are. And personally, also as you know, team member of Learning Planet, as well as another network here in Eastern India called WAIST. I see also how difficult it can be to lead a network of organizations in terms of, managing all of these stakeholders on a daily basis, making sure how to create synergies and collaborations in between them, how to make the communication flow, how to engage members. As Jeru was mentioning, 80% of engagement of your members, Jeru, is absolutely amazing, but it is, I feel from my own experience, quite the challenge. I would love this second round around the table to be an honest, critical review of maybe a moment of failure, or a moment of failure that led to a moment of realization that this was another, direction for you to take, or another decision for you to take as at the head of your organization while building up your network. So this round, especially in the context of the Learning Planet Festival, where we try to kind of take away from our experiences and share with our stakeholders, I'd love to go around the table and ask you that, is there a moment where you realized that you were not going the right way, and what did you get from it? How did you react to that particular realization? Julie, if you want to start off, what would that be?
Wow, you put me on the edge of the cliff now. I was thinking as you were explaining, I think in our case, it's not that we completely changed or found a different way of doing. It's just that we started seeing another way and doing both in parallel. So I'll explain more. So we do online incubation programs for early stage founders. And they mostly rely on 3 pillars. The first one is that we've created a digital program with an actual platform. So it's kind of a Duolingo for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs go through a training path during 4 months, and they have some activities to complete. It's a really learn by doing methodology. So they're not watching videos or reading PDFs, because that's not how entrepreneurs learn. They are actually like doing the activities, being on the field, interviewing people, validating assumptions, etc., etc. So that's one pillar. Another one is the mentorship. So they have, as we said before, a volunteer mentor that guides them through the whole journey, meets with them once a week. And then they have the whole community. So their cohort, but also the wider community of other Bridge for Billions programs. So we started doing these programs completely ourselves. We're a team of 25 people today. So us directly with the entrepreneurs and with this technology that allowed us to scale. And it worked great. And we still do this model of doing direct service, let's call it, which is us directly delivering programs for entrepreneurs globally. But then we saw that in entrepreneurship ecosystems are very different all over the world, and they have each their own challenges. That can be digital divides, that can be cultural, there can be a variety of challenges. So as we increasingly entered new markets like Latin America, like Eastern or Western Africa, etc., we saw that we had to work hand in hand with local players, and we had to do hybrid programs that were both online but also in person. So now what we do mostly is a training of trainers model, where we work with local incubators. We train them to our methodology, to using our technology, to facilitation, to how we do program, and we work with them to support a cohort of entrepreneurs in a blended manner, how they call it, meaning when they are in the village, they can just connect through their tablet or computer and do some of the activities and speak with the mentor. But whenever they are in the closest town where we have a partner incubator, they can be there online, meet with the cohort in person, have some sessions, have access to a device also, or to a stable internet connection. So I think what we discovered is just that we cannot have a one-size-fits-all in terms of your offer. And even if you're a global network, every person in that network has different challenges, and you need to cater your service to that. So for me, that would be the main learning.
Makes sense, Julie. Thank you for sharing this. So contextualizing your offer wherever you go. Thank you for the transition, for allowing me to do the transition to Stéphane and Louise. I think technology was just mentioned, and the fact that there's not one technology fits all kind of approach that we can implement. I don't know if you can relate to this challenge in particular learning, and if you want to share and react on top of that.
Well, the very spirit, and I'm sure I'm not the only one to think that, but the very spirit of technology is test and learn, and you always, like shift, adapt, break down, rebuild, like that modular sort of approach to anything that you do is, and it's actually even, some researcher would say that it's even a new faculty, a new cognitive capacity that we need to teach to kids, like that called the computational thinking, like how do you learn to solve issues? And that comes from distributed approach to engineering, to building tech product and so on. Now talking about adapting, maybe, because that's something that, of course, technology is a great tool for adapting and scaling, like that's a possibility of change and personalizing and personalization, again, for the better and for the worst, because when you think of like micro targeting and like the effect of it on the global economy of content on the internet, it became just a nightmare. And like it has very dangerous consequences. But so I will say something a bit personal then. I was born 60% deaf, and I learned to play music from a very young age, which helped me to overcome the disability. And this is something that I always, and like it took me almost 30 years to acknowledge this as something very important, defining who I am and how I interact with people, or how I will project myself. And so beyond the personal anecdote or story here, what I think is that what we learn from adapting is most of the time very painful, but it's also super, it's priceless. It's something you cannot like you cannot even and that's the beauty of learning in the end also, that you cannot put just one single and stable content on. It's something that will grow with you for the rest of your life. So talking about experiences that you have where you have to either pivot or you have to I think for me, building communities and sustaining them in the long term, meaning sometimes because of the pain and the gains of experiences, and again, pivoting a business model, shifting, meeting new challenges, will bring you to cross different communities. And sometimes, like, how do you sustain a whole, like a community as a whole, yet keeping it open? And technology is also interesting in that sense, because when you think of like the different kind of community that you find in the tech ecosystem, meaning like you have like the free software, you have the blockchain, you have like all kind of technical environment will bring a specific sort of value. So the values inside a community that allows that allows it to open and integrate new experiences and new members is something that I find very fascinating, that I think I will never have enough words to describe and share. But I don't know if that resonates with what you were expecting, Pauline.
Yeah, thank you, Stéphane Louise, for sharing personally and professionally your experience on this, with this beautiful message of, to a great extent, it's, I want to say, desirable to face challenges, desirable to fail in order to learn. I'm just sharing a quote that was shared by François Tadei. Thank you, François, for being with us in the chat. A quote by Mandela: I either succeed or I learn. There's no failure per se, because in what we tend to call failure, there's always a learning process that is
exactly, Pauline. And just if you allow me to add one thing,
Please.
and also because François is here and it's great, I think, like really it's about, I think learning is about inclusivity very much. So, like you bring people in when you learn, you don't take them out. And of course, it doesn't mean that you keep everything. We also need to forget and, so the power of forgetting, but and leaving some things aside. But yes, inclusion and learning is definitely something.
Yeah. So welcoming
together.
the diversity, welcoming the complexity is what you're saying is valuable.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Stéphane Louise, for sharing this. I just was realizing, Matthias, the only man of the day, I just realized that it was the case. It was not a particularly thought through process, but we actually have another French speaking session on the same topic later today at 6 p.m. CET. And it is also a relatively majorly women-led roundtable. Is it a coincidence? I'm not sure. But anyway, Matthias, over to you for this particular question on failure and learning. I'm guessing also relates to the audience and these change makers that you try to support in their own learning journey as well. But maybe you personally, professionally, where you stand at Change Makers Exchange, what would be your input?
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. So one issue that we really struggle with, in all honesty, and it's a bit of a moment of vulnerability to admit that, is that while we have, I think, a heartfelt, genuine ambition to be fully inclusive, it's even in our vision that we want to do our part to creating a world that allows everyone to be part of inclusive communities where people co-create towards the well-being of people and planet. We aren't really 100% inclusive yet. And I wish sometimes that from the beginning, in the founding years, we would have already had that a lot more on our radar. And I mean things like languages. So most of our summits are in English, and the community language is mostly English. I'm referring to things like neurodiversity, academic backgrounds, financial means, people who consider themselves maybe marginalized or underrepresented. We're trying our best to accommodate, but I think it is much harder to integrate those elements and become inclusive over time than to kind of think of all of these aspects and make it a very essential part of who you are and how you operate from the beginning. I don't have a good answer to this, and it's maybe less of a failure than a constant challenge, but I just want to, in all honesty, say that we have a long way to go when it comes to this. we're ready for that challenge, but it's a really interesting one because it's not that easy if you think about it. Run summits in different languages requires a completely different setup in the team and in your facilitators, et cetera, et cetera. It requires training and various other things. And so, yeah, I just want to point out that issue is something that I think offers opportunities for constant learning and beautiful rewards, because needless to say, it would be much better if we were all 100% inclusive. Yeah, that's maybe an impulse I would love to contribute here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I jump in here, Pauline, with just one idea? Great. Yeah. And also, if you allow me, Matthias, because I know a little bit Changemaker Exchange from the inside, and there's a challenge that we also struggle with at Bridge. I think both communities are very diverse in nationalities, race, ability, gender, sexual orientation, religion, urban, rural. But once I was at a Changemaker Exchange Summit and we're reflecting with a group of people what we all do have in common, and something we did all have in common is going to university studies. And I'm sharing this because we're at the Learning Planet Festival and we're talking about education. And I think that's one of the latest frontier. Also neurodiversity, as Matthias mentioned, but that's something where it's really hard to create communities where you also have people that didn't go through secondary studies, that didn't have access to that. And I think that's one of the frontier we need to work on to be truly, truly inclusive.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And I was just about also to bounce on what Matthias was saying as well. And Matthias, I would love, and Julie, all together, whoever wants to join the conversation at Learning Planet as well. We also are, facing the, this same questioning internally of how to be inclusive through the language, how to be inclusive throughout geographies. Leonora in the chat, thank you, Leonora, for your input, of course, was sharing about the digital divide and the access to internet connection, especially in a digitalized world. And so, if you're interested in getting into in depth on this topic, maybe we can kind of reschedule an exchange among networks on how to move forward on this very, very important issue. So thank you so much for sharing that vulnerable and definitely common point. Jeru, I wanted to transition towards you. I know that your Catalyst 2030 is welcoming so many different organizations from all over the world. I don't know if you can relate, for example, to the last point that was made around the table, and if you want to add another failure/learning that you have gathered on your journey. Over to you, Jeru.
Sure. I think Catalyst just went through a 3-year organizational phase. So some of you know, we consulted, I think, more than 50% of our membership. And many had so not the new members so much, but those who had been long. And because we are a very iterative membership, we started as a global movement because we were mainly people from Ashoka, Skoll, Schwab, and Echoing Green who used to meet, and we said, hey, we need to do something. But very soon, I think within a year, we realized that where most support was needed was in developing the ecosystem at the country levels. And therefore, over the last 6 months, even while our organizational planning was happening, our shift has been as to developing country chapters and ecosystems at the country level. That basically has come from the whole network. So it's a big shift from where it started to where it is within a year and a half. And I think that's something which is very, very, very important. We don't provide grants. We don't provide anything. So we are pretty simple. Actually, we say Catalyst is not a cash cow. So anyone who wants to walk into Catalyst and thinks about money, we are not the place. We say Catalyst is about us working together, sharing and collaborating. So, but that was one main learning for us. This learning came to us much more because our members are they state what they want, which is what we want. And we are really member driven. So it came very obvious when our members said, why is everything in English? What the hell? So we have monthly general assemblies, and I know those of you who have attended know that they happen in 37 different languages. So we use technology to try to make it happen. And we have members who have good broadband and other members who say, hey, this is too much data, so simplify. So I'm not saying we have answers. All I'm trying to say is that language is a barrier, but we've tried to use technology to overcome it. And when we did, we actually learned that it was something we were able to do. And we do see people using Wordly. It's freaking expensive. So that's the bad part. Sorry, I might have loved to be politically incorrect, but hey, it's cheaper than translators in 37 languages. So I think for me, the learning, and it's been our core principle, is always listening to the membership and moving according to how the membership wants. So we have our platform Zoho. So if anyone has advice, I'm asking for it, which is a membership connecting platform. Nobody uses it. So anyone has any good advice on it, please tell us. You know, we started as a WhatsApp group. We function through WhatsApp. We love it. Nothing complicated.
Jeru, I have to admit, I have never used Zoho myself.
Exactly. Nobody uses. I'm openly acknowledging nobody uses it. In our last General Assembly, everyone told us Zoho is crap, pretty much. What to do? But it's a great library. It's a great library for storing all the material that is there. So, but yeah, so if any of you have wonderful platforms where your communities can gather, most of us have no data, okay? We don't have, now more than 50% of our membership has 2G, 3G, not whatever, 4G, 5G, I don't understand all of this. So, okay, this is me.
Thank you, Jeru. And I love the, solutionary approach of through consultation, how you move forward just by asking it to your network, like how is it and what is it that we have to use and how is it that we have to do this. So that
there's no other way, Pauline. There is no other way. If we do it otherwise, we won't get our 80% engagement target. So
absolutely. Thank you, Jeru. And last but not the least, Laure. Laure, I mean, of course, your model of replication is wonderful, but sounds like a lot of challenges along the way. When I met you recently, I did not know about any other organization that was working on replication models like this. Do you want to share one or two with us today?
Yes, sure. Concerning the challenges, so yes, we do have many. One of the biggest one is that whenever you matchmake people, you not only need to have the person who will say this project would make sense in my region because there is a problem to solve locally, and I love this new job that I have of replicating a proven solution, but also I need to have a great fit with the person that is originally that created the project in its own country. And so this is something we cannot really control, whether two people are going to like each other and be willing to collaborate further. So I think in this sense, whenever I say we are the Tinder of the replication, we share the same problem of there needs to be a fit, they need to fall in love, otherwise it's not going to work super well. By the way, I'm saying we are the Tinder, but we are absolutely not tech. Like this is not an app, we are a network. And so facing this problem, we thought, okay, it means we need to have much more people on both sides. We need to have a huge visibility among many different people that are potentially replicators, people who would replicate the solution, and a lot of choice also in the solutions that are worth replicating. So that it increases the possibility that there is a match between two persons. And so talking about community, I think one of the things that we didn't do well at the beginning, it's that we tried to overthink too much the community. We tried to say, oh, we will create this program for this type of profile of people. So some people will be ambassadors, some others will be future replicators, some others will be initiators. I mean, we wanted to create too many boxes where people would potentially be in the community. Though I think I like super much the approach of Catalysts. That is to say, anybody is like join if you share the mission, if you share the vision, and then you're going to create your own boxes, if you want to say so, and you're going to drive this community wherever the community wants to be driven. And so yeah, that was our biggest challenge. And for those who joined the conference like 15 minutes ago, ago. Now, 1 hour ago, we had a completely different website. The website has been changed in live, and so now the doors are much more open to anyone who actually believes in the vision and the mission, and then you will make things happen inside the community.
Thank you, Laure. I love how you basically invite all of us to maybe not over structure and to be fine with sometimes going with the flow, and therefore also linking it with our past conversation. By going with the flow, first, you allow learnings from the diversity of stakeholders to come into you. And second, it probably also makes you learn how to make mistakes on the way and learn from it, which is also a conversation that we've had internally with Learning Planet, which also personally I learned a lot from. So thank you so much, Laure, for sharing this. I think we've gone around the table for a second time. Thank you so much, everybody, for this. I'm trying to take a few questions also from the audience to kind of frame the rest of our conversation. I'm going to go towards Stéphane and Louise, and then we'll go again through the five of you and your experiences. And I would love for each of you to spend a bit more time, taking the time to take us through the process of building a network and creating impact, real change on the field, socially, environmentally, societally, through the different key features of your different networks. So Stéphane and Louise, and feel free to take it from a different angle if you'd wish, but your angle is mostly about using technology as a lever of change accelerator, as an accelerator of change. And I would love you to spend a few more minutes giving us more concrete examples, giving us more concrete inputs on how exactly the cascade from technology to impact is actually going. And last input from my end, we had a wonderful question from Ed in the Q&A. I don't know if you've seen this. There's this meta level of thinking, network of networks. We are all representative of networks around this particular table. Is there, maybe at the end of your slots, Stéphane and Louise, is there another level of thought that we could implement technology-wise or otherwise on enabling collaborations and synergies among the networks themselves? So it was a lot. I hope you got my point. If you can take us through some of your thoughts, that would be brilliant.
Yes. So I'll start with your first question, if I understood correctly. Example of like digital innovation to support change at scale. So first, let's be very, very concrete. Like what's happening in Africa and like the level of what we call, any entrepreneur will bring something new and add something new on the table. And what's very remarkable in Africa is that most of those innovation are using technology and necessarily need technology. So you can look at, like digitally enabled startups and, social project that will use technology to, grow faster, or you can also look at technological products and services that will also transform a sector, a market, and so on. And at Digital Africa, as I said, what we're looking at is digital innovation made in Africa that impact the real economy, meaning that we're not looking at, at technology, we're looking at really technology applied to health, energy, agriculture, education, of course. And one of the, I have like, thousands of examples of, successful startups. And it is a fact that also African startups are starting to raise more money and bring like more and globalize their solution. I don't know if you're familiar, Pauline, with some of the fintech successes from African continent, but obviously when you think of mobile money, for example, you think of M-Pesa, that was invented in Africa in 2007. M-Pesa was, and the story of M-Pesa is really interesting because it's a bunch of researchers working for Vodacom and Safaricom, the telco company in Kenya, that noticed that people, because very few people are banked in Africa, and still, like there's still, I think, a gap of like almost 65% if you take all across the continent of unbanked population. So people were exchanging airtime to, as a value and as a trade, a mean for trade. And that's how mobile money and M-Pesa was born. So this is just an example, but that is foundational for the whole ecosystem of technological and digital innovation in Africa. Now, if you look at, stories like Paystack is a Nigerian fintech, and, Cheaper Cash, WeCashUp, I mean, many fintech in Africa that are scaling and growing. And Paystack was just acquired by Stripe last year for $200 million. So which means that we are looking at now some innovation that are, reaching global scale and competing with Silicon Valley sort of product. Now, how does this represent a different model than Silicon Valley and, like the overcapitalization and the over, that Silicon Valley model for innovation was not specifically based on redistribution and didn't completely solve the inequality and access to infrastructure and access to resources. And that's how you must look, where you must look at technology as a change, a deal breaker and a change maker for distributing resources. So technically, when you use technology to distribute money, to distribute skills, to distribute access to opportunities, then yes, you have to deal with, being, necessarily you design a network of network, as you said, going to your second point, to your second question. So a network of network, that means that you have to, always look at what is the resources and create a consensus on what is the resources that we have to give access to. So at Digital Africa, for example, what we did is during the COVID pandemic, we noticed that a lot of the startups that were trying to raise money would find a harder time. It was actually a wrong, and talking about mistakes that you make sometimes, it was a wrong intuition. So we initially thought that because of the pandemic, the startup would be more challenged to find to raise money. So there's a financial product called a bridge. A bridge is basically a loan that a startup can get from different investors waiting for the second round of financing. So anyway, it's and so in France, we, the French tech community actually had launched the French Tech Bridge. So just a funding tool for, when you don't reach and meet your numbers and your figures, or you have, you have to deal with investors saying, okay, I'm not going to actually follow on this new round because, the economy is sort of uncertain because of the pandemic and so on. So we put together what we call the Bridge Fund by Digital Africa. What we did is we used AI and like online platform to allow entrepreneurs to assess their own eligibility themselves, and then, like earn time in order to know as soon as possible whether they would be eligible, because a lot of the access to public funding is about that. It's about being able to know and identify whenever you can actually apply to a certain kind of a fund or support program. So that's on the one hand, and on the other hand, we worked with a co-option and co-investment sort of a principle. So what we did is that we brought several level and different type of investors. So again, it's not like one single community. It's like you can have some investors coming from like very different background, very different theses. Some can be business angels, some others can be more like a typical VC fund and so on. But what we wanted is the startup to be co-opted already by someone, so that by creating that knowledge sharing network, you would bring a more really like a fairer capacity for the startup to not only access to the money, but also be able to find support. So sorry if I was a little long, but just because your question was so big, I wanted to give a practical example. Like being a network of network doesn't mean that you only deal with principle and you only like open sort of a, you know, APIs functionment, you know, like you only open value and access to and channeling. You're not just doing channeling, you are doing also you know, like there's a feedback loop at all these there must be a feedback loop. That's what I mean, at all these level of designing networks and communities.